So, long story short, we are near the end of the semester. We are 1 week away from our last class, which is the 19th of December. We will not be meeting. This is the last time we're meeting, so we won't be meeting again via Zoom. The time we would meet during class, I'd like you to use that time to finish your presentation, your projects, or any other work you haven't completed. So the time we would spend here, spend the time doing your recording. If you have any questions, email me. I will respond back to you. If for some weird reason I don't respond to you, shoot me another email because sometimes the emails they don't always, if they're coming from a non CUNY source, they don't always come to me. So make sure you email me from your CUNY email. Personal emails they get filtered out through the filter system, so that may not come to me. So if you have questions, reach out to me through email. You have till the 22nd to really submit everything. Some dates popped up on your announcements. The 19th, I think, December 19th. Some of the dates are a little off because they're from last semester, but I'll clear it up, but I'm just clarifying that the final week is next week. So that's week 15. So we won't have an actual lecture like this. You will submit everything, submit your presentations, submit your work. Don't wait till the last minute. If you submit it to me the 23rd of December, I'm not going to get to it, not going to look at it. I have to submit grades. I have like a 2 day window to submit grades. So I'm giving you guys extra time. Okay, I could just tell you, this is the last day, done. But I'm giving you a little extra time to submit everything. But if you submit it after, I'm not going to grade it. I can't because I have a lot of I got to go through everything. Blackboard used to siphon everything into one format, and I could just click, 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 grade. This one I have to actually look and click into everything. So it is more work. It's a little more work. It's a little less streamlined for me as a professor. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but like if you did the work, I gotta go back in and check to see if you did it again. Whereas with Blackboard, it just fed it to me instantly. So if you redid work, old work, it would just shoot it over to me to grade. Here I have to look into each individual section to see. It'll show me if it's something new or not. So I'll see if it's something new, but it's not. It doesn't just feed into like a grade book where I could just click it. Maybe there's a way to do it. I don't know, but so I once I look at it and I put in the grades, that's it. Okay, so don't wait till the last minute. Get it done consistently over the course of the semester. I would recommend you do the SimNet last. If you've got everything on your plate, do the SimNet last. It's worth the least amount of your grade. It could take up more of your time. So I'd say that for last, right? You do what you can, work on it as you can. Okay. The midterm and for the midterm and final are the most. The final is should be open and available for you to access and take. The final consists of the second half of the semester, so you don't have to study the first half of the chapters. So everything from week 8 and on is the final. The final and midterm are 50% of your grade. So I would take those two things seriously. The presentations are 20%, so together that's 70, right? So if you just took the two finals and you did a 100 on your finals and your midterm and your presentation, you'd pass, right? But obviously the other 30% is the Connect assignments, the SimNet assignments, your discussion board, the SimNet being the least. So I feel like this class can be a little rigorous for some students, especially freshmen. The class is modeled after the Baruch business program. So Baruch's a top-rated business program in CUNY. It's actually top-rated uh, in the US. This is literally just a carbon copy of the Baruch course. So the workload is maybe more than what you might see at a different CUNY, but it's a good thing because your credits will transfer to Baruch. If you decide you're a business major, you want to transfer to Baruch, it's good, right? So I realize, for some students, it might be a little more than what they're used to. I'm trying to make it easy for you to get through it. So what I recommend is to attack what's worth the most first, midterm and final. If you're doing your connect assignments, even the recharge mode, the questions on the recharge mode, it's pretty much the same questions on the final and the midterm. In this case, the final, because we're doing the final. All the definitions in the side, those side definitions that you see, that's what they ask you on the final. So that's all you got to study. It's a timed exam online. I'm not proctoring it, so do what you do. Take the exam and just be prepared appropriately. We spoke about this the first day of class, so you know what you have to do. So without further ado, we will focus on the chapter this week, which is the money financial institutions and the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve controls the money supply. So when you go to the bank and you take out cash, or if you're sitting there and you have a couple of bucks in your wallet, how'd you get that money? Where'd it come from? Who gave it to you? My boss gave it to me. My mom gave it to me. How'd she get that money? How did he get that money? Uh, you know, I don't know, right? My boss sold some junk to some dude and got some money. Well, how'd that guy get that money? He got a loan from the bank. Oh, and he used that to fund his business. Well, then how did he get that? How did the bank get the money? Right? So money comes from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a quasi governmental institution, but it's actually not a governmental institution. It's a private institution that works with your government to handle the printing of money. And it's really institution of the Federal Reserve is really a conglomerate of banks that are chartered together to form the body and constituents of the Federal Reserve. So it's a banking cartel that the federal government adheres to and lends and uses money in accordance to the banking cartel in the form of the Federal Reserve. So that's what that is. The Federal Reserve, uh, the government borrows money from the Federal Reserve. They have a ledger, Federal Reserve ledger. That debt is, the government's debt. That's how money gets pushed through our system. Then the banks get the money. The banks lend that money, right? Lends to you and me. Businesses, they pay salaries. That's how money gets out of lending. That's how money gets into the economy, trickles the economy. You and I pay interest on that. You borrow money from a bank, you pay interest. If you don't borrow money from a bank, you're still paying interest because you pay taxes, right? Taxes go back to cover our financial debt. It's all tied to the system. What's important to understand is that the interest rates are set by the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve sets interest rates. Those interest rates are high or low. They decide what the interest rates are. Those interest rates determine if you can borrow money for cheaper or borrow it for more. It affects our entire economy, how much money you pay on a mortgage, a bank note, how much interest you get on your savings account. The cost directly relates to the cost of labor and goods in some direct way, because it's more expensive to borrowing money to build a new business or lend is more expensive. So when money's cheap, people borrow more. When money costs more to borrow, people borrow less. That's usually how it works. So when the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates, money's cheap. So you have more money flowing into the economy. When money is more expensive, the interest rates are higher, money is more expensive. So one way the Federal Reserve combats inflation is the loss of value of money, is to make money more expensive to borrow. So people borrow less, so it becomes more scarce. So borrowing less money means there's less money in the supply. If there's less money in the supply, it's more scarce. If there's more scarce, you have less access to it. If you have less access to it, that means the value of it increases, which pushes down inflation, meaning money. So inflation, I see a chat. Hold on before I get into the chat. Predominantly, the issue being is that with inflation occurs because people borrow and they become less price sensitive because money's easier to access. So if I have access to more money, I'm less price sensitive. I'm less price sensitive because businesses can charge me more, and because I don't care about the price sensitivity so much, they can kind of gouge me a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, and it creates inflation. When there's less money to go around, I become more price sensitive. So if everything is really expensive, I don't know. I don't know if I want to buy it, right? But essentially, inflation occurs because there's more money coming into the economy. People have more money, they spend more and by spending more, you have less price sensitivity. Because you're less price sensitive, prices get pushed up, and then you're kind of in this oh situation where everything's too expensive. It's more complicated than that, but that's a very basic reasoning for it. All of it's tied to Federal Reserve. So someone posted contractionary monetary policy. Contractionary monetary policy is when you're trying to contract the money supply, which is raising interest rates. That's what the Federal Reserve is looking to do now. But a lot of what I'm saying probably doesn't make any sense to you guys. But that's why we're learning about what a lot of the business intro to business is just definitions, vocabulary, because you might not know what the heck I just said because you don't know the vocabulary. If you know the vocabulary, you can follow what I'm saying. So money, in the first sentence here, money, anything people generally accept as payment for goods and services. Bartering is a direct trade of goods and services. When you have money or you barter, you create a system of arbitrage. It's not discussed in your lecture textbooks. Arbitrage is when there's an exchange of goods for a token of some sort, currency, money, fiat, whatever it is. The token itself is being used instead of the services or the item at hand. So then that token can be bartered or exchanged at differential values between other individuals or other economies, which in hand creates arbitrage. So I'll give you an example. If you see a stock, Apple, right? You can buy it on the US Stock Exchange. NASDAQ goes for a certain price, but there's different stock exchanges. It's not the same price on each stock exchange. It's different stock. There's also international stock exchanges too. So that price is not the same at different exchanges because people are making bids and offers differently across different exchanges. So the same item can be priced differently, Apple stock, at a different stock exchange. The difference between what is trading at one place and another is called arbitrage. Okay, so arbitrage is inherent to when there's trade and barter, particularly in a system of money, you create arbitrage. Arbitrage differentiates the actual value of what something is. It's not congruent, meaning Apple stock is Apple stock. You got one share of Apple is one share of Apple. The price you could calculate the price of Apple, what it trades for. But if there's arbitrage between what people are offering and selling and trading at, then there's sort of you can buy it on a high or a low or whatever, and that creates arbitrage. Arbitrage is what really causes the shift and change in value between economies and states. A state as in not a state as in America, as in a state of a country or a state of a city, but a state as in the state of how something is. So to put it plainly, if you work for a company and you sew jeans and they pay you the minimum wage to sew jeans in the US, then I go to Sri Lanka and I sew jeans in Sri Lanka, I'm not getting paid the same amount, but the labor is the same, right? If I could sew 12 jeans in an hour, I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just saying if I could sew 12 jeans in an hour, a dozen jeans in an hour, and I do it in Sri Lanka and I get paid pennies on a dollar, I do it in the US and I get minimum wage, the service is the same. Nothing changed. But the price of what I get paid changed, right? So how is that possible? Why is it that my service is a lot cheaper in Sri Lanka? And I mentioned this before when we had in-class sessions. I used this example before. If I'm providing the same type of service, an hour of labor at the same rate, why is it cheaper in Sri Lanka but not in the US? Right? So it's arbitrage. So money and its valuations become skewed through economic systems, through buying, selling, bartering, interest rates, things of that sort. Economic policies, which we discussed, international policies that taxes and tariffs and things of that sort. Uh, Demand. All of these systems create arbitrage, even though the thing is the same. The person working in Sri Lanka, person working in the US, same, this just making jeans. Nothing's different. But why is the price more or less? So an important, very important aspect to this is that um, the Federal Reserve directly affects arbitrage, directly affects the supply of money, the value of money, the availability of money, and asset prices. Okay, I'll get into asset price in one sec. So asset prices is, for example, your house, all right? So in the 80s, you could buy a house in Brooklyn for $50,000, $30,000, maybe 100, depending on the neighborhood, maybe a little more. That's 40, 45 years ago, 44 years ago. You could buy a house for under $100,000 in Brooklyn. Same house today is $1 million. Crazy, right? Why? So if you look at the average rate of return of the stock market, conservative assets, bonds, mortgage bill, Federal Reserve notes, mortgage notes, low risk investments. They average 3, 4, 5%. High, some bonds 5.5%. Real estate, New York real estate 5% on average. Compound growth of real estate in New York. So if you take a $50,000 asset like a building, and then you compound that $50,000 at 5% over 40 years, you're going to get $1 million or something close to that amount, hundreds of thousands or more. So the property values that you're seeing, it's quite congruent with the economic growth in the real estate market. It's not some crazy thing. But the question is, did your salaries compound at 5% a year? Of course not. So if you're working a working class job from 1980 till now 2024, your salary has not compounded 5% per year. It's probably half of that or maybe less. So everything around you is getting, let's say, 5% more expensive in terms of assets, but your salary isn't. So then you're going to get priced out from owning a piece of real estate. Okay. The reason being is because the debt that is held by the Federal Reserve, well, actually the government on the books or the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, directly ties to asset prices. So that means the more debt the American economy has tied to the printing of money, the Federal Reserve, the more debt we have, you'll see asset prices correlate. Okay, so the more Federal Reserve debt that America has, asset prices will increase in accordance to that. Real estate, etc., stocks, bonds, so on and so forth. Not your income, not your salaries. It's not correlated. Okay, that's important to know. That as debt goes up, the money you make isn't going to keep up with it. They're not correlated with each other. So that's why now your generation is looking at property values and you're like, I can't buy anything. Right? It's not because you guys suck or are lazy. Maybe that's what a boomer might tell you, but what do they know about economics? All right. It's because of the economics is literally what's going on, right? You're struggling just to pay rent. A Five Guys hamburger is almost $18 with fries and a drink. Don't buy food anymore. Cook. His prices are more expensive, right? Now, some professions, middle class professions, pay different, right? If you're a doctor, maybe some sort of engineer, some technician of some sort, or something, software engineer. You're making, or maybe you have one of those city jobs like in San Francisco where you're a custodial engineer making $250,000. But the same job in the Midwest would pay like 30,000 or something, you know. So it's all kind of relevant. But as far as the curve of things go, it's not a good curve. And the other thing is, if only middle class people can afford a certain lifestyle, and what does that mean for everybody else, right? You could so a lot of people, my family's generation probably took for granted the opportunities that they had that they thought would always be there. They're not there anymore. So for you, there's a warning. It's not going to be there as you get older. Unless your family has property or they have finances that they can pass on to generational wealth, it's not going to be there. That doesn't mean you can't save and buy a home. It's just harder. It requires way more discipline, more knowledge and advanced studies in the economy and stocks and bonds. And you got to know what you're doing. You got to be disciplined. You got to actually earn more income. You got to have a job or profession that earns more income, which is why you're here in class to get a degree to then help you elevate your salaries, right? So it is what it is. But a lot of this ties to what you're learning. Inflation, right? We touched on inflation, falling dollar, rising dollar, which we touched on a bit. These are the five major parts of the Federal Reserve: the Board of Governors, the Federal Open Markets Committee, the 12 Federal Reserve banks, the three advisory councils, and the member banks of the systems. This consists of all the banks of the system, and they're all private, right? So if you're in Russia, Russia is a part of the Federal Reserve System. So is America. So are most modernized countries. Even third world countries, they're part of the Federal Reserve System. They may not agree with each other on politics, but they're all privy to this privately owned system that their money supply is tied to. So, something to think about. The other thing to consider is, people, you've got Ukraine. I'm not getting political. Okay, just saying. You've got Ukraine, you've got Russia, they're fighting. America's supporting this guy, China's supporting that guy. They're all part of the Federal Reserve. They print their money. It's the same system. So you're fighting over communism or capitalism. It doesn't matter, guys. It's all part of the same cartel. The Federal Reserve System is what it is, right? They're all playing the same monopoly game. So the Federal Reserve System is international, but it's also global as well. And it's important to understand how the system works because it determines your paycheck or the lack of your paycheck if you don't understand what you're doing, right? So this is going into, discount rates. The Federal Reserve, they can borrow and lend money between banks and things of that sort. This is how the check clearing process between the Federal Reserve bank systems work. The history of the Federal Reserve. There's some pieces that are not really explicitly here, but they're saying that the cash shortage problem in 1907 led to the creation of the federal bank system. There's way more history here about it than what's being presented. This is very top-down overview. And then the U.S. economy changed from a gold standard to a fiat system over the years. Commercial banks deal with depositors and borrowers. There's credit unions and saving loan associations, which are different type of banking intermediaries, and other non-bank institutions like life insurance, pensions, stuff that sort. And the banking crisis was caused due to greed, and the FDIC protects the assets that you have in the bank. As long as your money's in the bank, the banking system, the banking cartel functions. If your money's not in the bank, the system fails. FDIC is there to protect it. So guys, I'm going to end the lesson today. This is the last time I'll see you, and make sure you finish all your work as well. So take care, and I will post the recording shortly. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email.
All right, cool. Real quick, Professor. Is there a way I can get the smart books out of recharge mode, or do I just do it until like,
You're stuck.
oh, I'm just stuck? Okay, got it.
But
Google.
do what you can.
All right.